Artificial intelligence. Should we be scared of it? Should we be excited about it? Or does anybody even understand enough to know? I was determined to find an expert in this that actually really understands what they're talking about, what AI is, what it can do, what it can't do, and how it's going to change everything. Thrilled to be able to sit down with Steve DeAngelis, who's the CEO of Enterra Solutions, which is one of the world's top AI companies that works with publicly traded companies all over the world implementing AI solutions. And Steve has some fascinating takes on AI and what it's going to do to the world around us. And I really think you're going to enjoy this one. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter & Clark. All right, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to dive into this. So can you give us just a little bit of background about your early life, sort of where you grew up?
Sure.
Family life, that kind of thing?
Well, thank you, Brendan. I grew up in Scarsdale, New York, which is a suburb of New York City, about 25 to 30 miles north of Manhattan. Grew up in a very nice suburb and a town that had great schools. So I was privileged to go to school in a town that valued education.
Nice. Any brothers or sisters? Or
yeah, I have one brother who works as a partner in a hedge fund, and I have a sister who is the senior marketing executive, and another sister who is a senior executive assistant for a well-known hedge fund manager.
Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, you are one of the, you're on the cutting edge, I would say, of artificial intelligence and its application, particularly its application in business. Did you know back then when you were a kid, were you interested in technology and, what's next? And what were you interested in as a kid, or when did this sort of bug take hold?
Well, so back when I was, a kid, there wasn't anything that you would hear of as artificial intelligence, right? So it was, the things that I was always interested in is I always had an interest in international politics. I always had an interest in mathematics. I always had an interest in understanding how things operate. So, when you look at, decoding the world around you, right? I would say that my interest came from trying to understand the world that I lived in, right? And, and as you're a young person, right, you oftentimes are, unbounded by practical thoughts, right? So you're thinking about things, with intellectual curiosity and an interest. So, so I think my earliest interest was understanding, the intersection of the international political environment. I'm talking the time that I'm in high school and college, right? Looking at the international political environment, looking at ways of quantitatively analyzing that. And so while I was an international affairs major in college, one of the areas of focus that I had was in quantitative analytics, right? So understanding, geopolitical interactions through mathematical simulation models, but that leveraged, a early interest in mathematics and logic and philosophy that I had when I was, much younger in junior high school. High school. So,
no, I love it. So when you got out of school, did you immediately start your own business? Have you been an entrepreneur since then, or did you cut your teeth at larger firms?
No, I cut my teeth at larger firms. I mean, I was, I didn't know if I wanted to be a banker or a lawyer, so I went to work for a law firm as a law clerk or a legal assistant, and my first year out of college. And then I determined that I really want to be a banker rather than a lawyer. So I got a job at the Bank of Boston in their strategic planning group. And early in my career, I was, a young officer at the Bank of Boston doing mergers and acquisitions. But, as the younger person on the totem pole, my job was to build, analytic models in back then Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love it.
It's a long
I
time.
love it. Well, this is a sort of quicker than normal backstory, as the audience will probably recognize, but that's fine because I really want to jump into Enterra and
Sure.
AI and everything that you're doing now. So take us to the point when you decided to start Enterra and how all that came together.
Well, so it came together in the aftermath of September 11th, right? So one of the reasons I started the company is I'm a New Yorker. September 11th happened. Bad guys tried to kill us. My sister, the one who I mentioned was a senior chief marketing officer for a large public company, was at that time working for a firm in the building next door to the Bank of Boston. Next door to the World Trade Center. And, she and her colleagues had to evacuate that building on September 11th. And, it was a fairly scary thing for my family and I. So, having just sold my last company, I decided to, try to help. And a lot of the work that we had done in my previous company was in data integration. So the government had a connect the dots problem. We knew how to connect dots. So I wound up trying to get involved um, in helping the government address non-integrated systems in the post September 11th aftermath. So we started in Enterra, in 2001, and very quickly we started to bridge the sort of gap between the government, the commercial, and academia. So I became a scientist at Carnegie Mellon Software and Engineering Institute. Um, built a enterprise resilience management consulting methodology there to diagnose how critical infrastructure and critical components of the commercial and public organizations were how well are resilient to threats and vulnerabilities coming from bad guys, right? And that started a 25-year journey in initially solving problems in counterterrorism using data integration and data analysis and building resiliency models, to starting to use artificial intelligence as a tool to analyze the data, because we had so much data at that time that you can never get enough humans to analyze the data by hand. So you needed an artificial intelligence to help along with that process. So we started again in Terra its early roots as a national security contractor in the aftermath of September 11th.
Wow. That's truly fascinating.
That's what New
The
Yorkers
connection.
do, Brandon. We get that's what New Yorkers do. We get hit and we hit back.
Oh, I love that. I love that. But the connection there, right, between sort of September 11th and what to do to try to prevent something like that from happening again. You mentioned early on the phrase that I wrote down: decoding the world around you.
Yep.
And so I suspect that part of what you were trying to do for the government is try to say, look, we have all this data, all this information. How can we sort of anticipate with patterns or different trends and analysis when something might happen again? And that is, in my sort of lay perspective, my limited understanding, I mean, that is sort of the basis of artificial intelligence, as I understand it, right? Is that ingesting enough data and information to be able to anticipate the next whatever prompt or guess.
Yeah, I mean, so let me sort of unpack that a little bit.
Please
start with the decoding of the world around you, right? That is one of the things that we do as a company, right? Is we use applied mathematics and artificial intelligence to understand data, to try to find the lowest common denominators, the sort of the governing principles of the systems that we are analyzing. So let's say in the case of September 11th, we wanted to understand through the data, could we identify ahead of time patterns within data sets that would indicate that something bad was going to happen, right? While we can't predict every bad thing that's going to happen, Brandon, we want to get so good at responding that we can mitigate a risk or exploit an opportunity better than our opponents can, right? So in in geopolitical conflict, right? Oftentimes you could see things coming through the data. Now, the problem with September 11th was that we had a ton of data, but we didn't integrate that data holistically into one place where we can analyze it and find those patterns. We found the patterns in silos, right? But we couldn't connect the dots. Remember the phrase "connect the dots," right?
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of signal in that we were detecting through a lot of systems, but we weren't integrating that together to get a cohesive perspective as to what the bad guys were doing, right? So at the beginning of the 21st century, the technology to integrate data became much more easy to do than it was previously, right? The internet was now 5 to 6 years old. In 2001, the ability to store data, the cost of storing data was dropping precipitously. Our ability to get a hold of that data and put it into one place was getting easier, right? But we still had methods of operation, ways of working that were in silos, right? And oftentimes those silos were for security purposes, right? So the FBI has its data, the CIA has its data, the Defense Department has its data, the NSA has its data, and what you wound up having is data in those silos, for good reasons, because we don't want to, have data go out of those secure systems, but at the same time, you can't get a composite picture if you don't integrate it. So we had to figure out new ways of working, right? So part of the problem was technical, right? Part of the problem was data integration. Part of the problem was, workflows, ways of working. So you had to integrate data, you then had to analyze data, and then you had to change the ways that organizations worked in order to share data, right? So they built, new terms like joint commands, joint operation centers, and you heard the word joint come up, right? In the military, across governmental agencies, where you had terms like fusion centers were created in the early 2000s, where they were the government was fusing information together. So in all of that time, we wanted to help understand how to leverage that newly integrated data to analyze it, to understand how we can make the U.S. Critical infrastructure resilient. Resilience doesn't mean redundancy, like we have a backup system and a backup system to the backup system. Resiliency means we want to get so nimble, so agile in responding, right? That we could detect the signal and we can deploy a countermeasure faster than the opponent can react to our countermeasure, right? So that whole capability was built up during that time frame. So when I was at Carnegie Mellon, we had built the resiliency methodology there, and then started to then take the next step of the journey, which was to understand how to systematize that. And that led me to some work we had done at Oak Ridge National Laboratories in their national security and mathematical and computational sciences directorate over there. So it was an evolving set of cooperations with governmental agencies, quasi-academic organizations, to help not only build a method initially, but then build models that would allow you to help manage that resiliency. And today, we apply those resiliency models to large commercial enterprises, right? And where part of the resiliency is competitiveness. How do we understand the nature of competition in the markets that our clients operate in? How do we understand the conditions under which our clients take market share from their competitors? understand conditions under which competitors take share from our clients, and then how do we derive the optimal play that our clients can run in order to beat the competition. So think of that as like the sword side of resiliency. The shield side is, while we can't predict every bad thing is going to happen, we want to get so good at determining market signals that we can mitigate a risk or exploit an opportunity better than the competitors can.
Yeah.
Right. So in the corporate environment, it's how do you become the most competitive entity you can in the market to beat your competition? In great powers conflict, how does brand America beat the brand China, brand Russia, right? How do we compete for influence around the world, using levers that we have at our disposal, right? So understanding that is all, stemming from a desire to decode the world around you.
Yeah.
I
I
hope
love
that
that.
answers your question.
No, I love that. And I mean, talk about sort of connecting dots. One of my very first interviews on this podcast was a senior level CIA, was an individual that was in the counterterrorism division of the CIA. And I'll never forget the discussion we had, but I remember him saying that around August, they knew that something big was going to happen, or that somebody somewhere was planning something, and they knew that, or they felt like something was going to happen, but they didn't know what, they didn't know when, and they didn't know who. And then, of course, 9/11 happens. And so it's fascinating to hear sort of the story after that, in terms of what tools and partners that the government was trying to use in order to build that resiliency, so something like that doesn't happen again. And I can only imagine sort of trying to untangle that spider web of, I mean, not only just sort of on the bureaucracy part of it, but all of the data, and then getting, integrating all of that. It's fascinating. But so applying that now to the corporate world. Well, I guess let me ask you this: is Enterra mostly, is it still as focused on government work? It just added corporate, or has it sort of you transitioned a little bit?
We transitioned about 10 years ago to a commercial sector entity. But but it's the same type of problem, Brandon. It's just a different application space, right?
Right.
So like I said, corporations compete for influence. Nation states compete for influence, right?
Yep.
And, it's our job to make sure that we put our clients in the most competitive place that they can be, right? And as a country, I don't work for the United States government, but I hope that we put brand America in the best possible place that it can through all the levers that we have at our disposal as a nation state.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so on the subject of artificial intelligence, I think you can provide some excellent clarity and understanding here for us. Just thinking about the subject of artificial intelligence, I mean, I sort of liken it to the internet, right? In the mid 90s, you were to tell me, or any sort of average American, there's this thing called the internet, and it's going to change the world. And the question is, well, what is it? Oh, well, you can connect computers, right? And so there's a sort of this abstract understanding of what the internet is, but it's difficult to sort of think about, okay, well, what does that mean for me in 10 years? How does that, it's hard to connect that abstract thought with something like, having access to all the world's information in your pocket. And I think that's sort of where we are, maybe very generally speaking, with artificial intelligence. It's like this abstract understanding for everyday people obviously that's powerful, especially when you start talking about things that have, intelligence in magnitudes of, 100 times more intelligent than humans. That's great. But what does that really mean for, a small business, for example? And I know that is like the world's broadest question, but what are your thoughts on AI and how impactful and what type of change agent it will be over the next 5-10 years for a typical business?
So, so Brandon, let me just step back and answer the question. We're probably at the precipice of arguably the most consequential technological innovation humankind has seen since fire, right? It is an artificial general intelligence, and especially an artificial general intelligence as combined with quantum computing coming at the same time will, in my opinion, be the most fundamental scientific change agent the world has seen, right? We don't, in other words, the internet started to spawn a lot of the capabilities that we have today. Like if we didn't have the internet, we might not have artificial intelligence in the way that it is today, right? But artificial intelligence, and especially an artificial general intelligence, where a AI can reason in a human-like fashion at scale, right? And be able to self-replicate and to learn and to start to um, you know uh, behave in a way that is self-generating from the artificial intelligence itself, right?
Right.
Is has so much potentiality for good, but also so much potentiality for bad, right?
Absolutely.
We don't know how to predict it yet, but it's coming because it's you're not going to stop the motion that has happened, right? So I believe that we're about to enter into, like I said, the most consequential age of change, and the change will hasten. It'll get faster year by year by year as generative AI, right? Which is one flavor of artificial intelligence, right? There's symbolic AI, right? Which is the use of mathematical logic and inference reasoners to reason in a human-like fashion. Think of that as like deep reasoning AI. And generative AI today, which is more like thin slicing AI, you can cast a wide net to the internet. You can bring a bunch of information back. You could generate reports. You could generate analysis. But the large language models don't have the ability to reason and to be able to discern efficacy of information yet, but they're going to quickly get there, right? So when you combine deep reasoning AI with generative AI, right, that combination is going to allow you to start to build an artificial or start to create an artificial general intelligence, right? And these AI systems, whether it be NVIDIA's systems, not the chip part of NVIDIA, but the large language model, right, or
Right.
OpenAI or Microsoft's products or Google's Gemini or others, right? As they start to self-actualize and they start to build enough knowledge, they have enough learnings from massive amounts of massive amounts of computations, massive amounts of intersections with data, right? Massive amounts of ingesting the internet and all other sources of knowledge, right? They will start to learn, and they will take on a life of their own, right? So, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the rules of the game are yet, right? But what we do know is that change is upon us, right? And then when you add to that the change that's going to come from quantum computing, right, and being able to bring online practical quantum computers and allow us to understand things like protein folding and complex optimization. You're going to be able to solve mathematical problems or material science problems or supply chain problems or in ways that we can't today. But that also has a dark side where a quantum computer will be able to break cipher codes, right? So they'll be able to will create a whole nother challenge to information security, right? You'll have to create quantum ciphers, right? Or So as you look at that, we have two major forces colliding technologically at the time that the world is going through climate change. The world is going through geopolitical reorganization, right? So I think what's going to happen, it's going to put our human skill sets, right? We're going to need, the best of our skill sets to adapt and navigate. Now, one of the things that humans are good at is reasoning and thinking about stuff. We're not so great at calculating. Like if I gave you, 25-digit numbers, we couldn't calculate it in our head, but we could put it into a calculator or into an Excel spreadsheet, and we could get the answer in 3 seconds. But we know what the answer means because we can reason about the answer. So humans are going to be it's going to be incredibly important to have enlightened humans to be able to understand how to harness this information or how to manage it for the maximum good and mitigate the potential for bad things to happen.
Yeah. That I mean, it's in some ways it's difficult, at least for my mind, to wrap my mind around, I suppose. I want to spend a minute on quantum computing and how I think I understand why it's important and how the combination of the two can be powerful. I think it was may have been December, January of this year. Google had a press release about Willow, their quantum computer, about that it performed a calculation in 5 minutes that would take the world's fastest supercomputer, I think it was 10 to the 31st power years to compute, which, as a side note, said that is older than the age of the universe itself. and talk about hard to wrap your mind around. But is it that with as AI gets more, as it's more developed, it becomes able to reason better, that we're going to need sort of the horsepower that comes with quantum computing in order that you need that compute, if you will, to power the AI? Is that, I mean,
Yeah, no. So those are different things, right?
Okay.
So powering powering AI, the reason we need all the computing power is that the machines today, the large language models, are casting super wide nets in the internet, bringing a bunch of information back, and they're searching and churning and learning through tons of information. So they need a lot of very fast computers with very special purpose chip engineered to process that information so they can cast the widest net possible and learn from that information as much as they can. Quantum computers, on the other hand, right? But I just gave you a vast oversimplification of what.
Sure.
Quantum computers, on the other hand, right, think of it as you have a big block of steel, right? So let's say that you and I, we go to the steel store and we get this, 2 foot long by 2 foot high by 2 feet deep block of steel, right? And then we go to the hardware store and we get the best hacksaw that we possibly can, right? So think about that hacksaw as like statistical models or optimization today. Is linear programming capabilities where we use a hacksaw and we can cut away. We've got the sharpest blade possible, Brent. And we're cutting away and cutting away and cutting away. You know that it's going to take you forever to cut through that block of steel, right? And then someone comes along and invents a thing called an acetylene torch, right? And we go whoosh, right? And the block of steel gets cut in half in 30 seconds, where we could be sawing for 20 years, right? The notion is that a quantum computer is not a general purpose computer. So computing is branching for the first time, right? So computing as we know it, right, is going to branch. You're going to have classical computers and quantum computers. Quantum computers are made to solve a set of problems that are high dimensional in nature. So the dimensionality of the problem, right, the possible combinations in order to solve that problem exceed the computational abilities of all of the classical computers. The problem is not the problem. The reality is quantum computers are, think of them as special purpose computers that are developed to solve a particular class of what's called MP hard problems, right? Problems that where the combinatorics coming from the high dimensional nature of the problem it's trying to solve, the numbers of variables, right?
Right.
The possible combinations are so great that the hacksaw will never cut through that high dimensional steel. But the acetylene torch, right, which is designed fit for purpose to cut through that steel, is going to be is the perfect tool for it. So you're going to see now, like I said, for the first time, computing branching, classical computing and quantum computing. Classical computers are, think of them as general purpose computers that solve most of the problems that people or businesses interact on a daily basis. Quantum computers are aimed at a particular class of very complex optimization problems, right? That a classical computer cannot solve. And so it'll get us breakthroughs in, supply chain optimization, global supply chain optimization, where the possible combinations involved in synchronizing and optimizing a global supply chain exceed what today's optimization tool, that I'm metaphorically giving you the example of the hacksaw, right? Cannot solve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great analogy. And what I was trying to inartfully sort of put into words. So is it fair? Would it be fair to say that quantum computing is or that classical computing doesn't provide the resources necessary to leverage AI because it's not able to handle as complex?
I think you want to keep them separate, right? I think you want to think about quantum computers as solving a class of problems, that are in the area of nonlinear optimization or NP hard problems, right? That's in a world by itself. Artificial intelligence, right, will always leverage classical computers. There may be certain applications that a artificial intelligence will call a quantum computer to generate an analysis and integrate the output from that analysis. Or the artificial intelligence can instruct the quantum computer to do a set of things and could help understand the context or help understand the output and explain the output from the quantum computer. But they're two separate things, right?
Yeah.
But we're at the precipice of massive change that's going to come to humanity from the application of both of those technologies, right? At a time that the world is also going through a lot of structural change.
Right. Gotcha. Well, so from an entrepreneurial standpoint or a business, let's call it a leadership standpoint, as we all know, far more small businesses in this country than large publicly traded corporations. If you were a business owner, and I don't mean like the owner of like a small hardware store. I mean, a small business, maybe a couple $100 million in revenue, and you knew that AI was like you said, the biggest change agent that humanity has ever seen or has seen since fire. What would you be doing? Or there's a disconnect, I think, between sort of recognizing that and understanding that and not knowing what to do with it or because of it or to protect against it. If you had a small business, what would you be doing to try to dig in and leverage and understand how AI could help you?
So I would look, AI is going to change a lot of business applications. So like marketing, for example, You could do your marketing today through a AI intelligent agent that will help you develop marketing campaigns. It'll write, your press releases. It'll do social media posts for you. Like, it'll dramatically transform the way that you do business. It's not just going to help you save cost, right? But it's going to help you do things faster at the speed of the market, where it, could take, a AI large language model, 30 seconds to write a press release, where it may take a human, 3 hours to write a press release, right? It may take a human 3 weeks to do a marketing plan. It could take an artificial intelligent agent, 3 minutes to draft a plan, right? So I think what you're going to find is that there are transformational uses for that are horizontal applications. Think about like marketing, accounting, things like that, where they're common services that go across companies regardless of what industry you're in, right? And then there's going to be a set of industry applications. How do I do things in my industry better? How do I do things in the, process industries business? How do I do things in discrete manufacturing? How do I do things in book, in the book and publishing industry, right? So every one of these industries are going to have very specific industry focused applications, vertical applications, and a set of horizontal efficiency plays, marketing, human resources, right? You're going to see organization charts, right, in a company that has humans and agents, right? So you're going to see an org chart, Enterra's going to have its own org chart this year that'll have humans doing most of the functions, but some functions will be done by intelligent agents.
Yep.
Right. So it's an interesting change, but I would hire, if I was a small business, I'd hire a couple of young people, right, who are, AI natives, digital AI natives, right, who think like this, right? And I'd hire them and say, how can I, where's the low hanging fruit for AI in the business, and find applications. Like, we're enabling a really cool company. It's a roll up of marketing firms, right, who is using our technology platform to go and acquire a number of mid-sized marketing firms on top of a common agentic AI platform, right? And the notion is you can roll up a company, you can make it infinitely more efficient, right? And you could train a new class of employee to use AI as AI natives, right? To be able to perform marketing functions much more fast, much more efficiently, maybe with even higher quality, right, than what humans could generate, and then have humans apply that to the business in a way. So you take the human time out from doing rote functions, and then you train humans to do more higher order functions. So, a lot of people think, oh, the robots are coming, Brandon. Oh, the robots are going to take my job, are going to eliminate it. I believe that AI is fundamentally a net job creator. I think it's going to generate more jobs than anybody ever imagined, right? And, I could, talk to you for 5 minutes about that, but it is, I think it's going to be the biggest single job creator that we found since we created Silicon Valley, right? With personal computing and software in the 1970s, right? So I think it's going to be, you just look at the one data center from Microsoft and OpenAI, Brandon, in Texas is $120 billion of investment. Think about not just the AI jobs, but think about the construction jobs that are needed to build the data center, the construction jobs and NVIDIA to build the chips, the power plants that have to get built because we don't have power plants sufficient to fuel the data centers, right? So all of those construction jobs, real estate jobs, hotel jobs to house the people as they do it, not even taking into account the layers and layers of AI jobs. Right. So I think, one of the things that's happened, in the last 30, 40 years is we offshored a lot of good middle class manufacturing jobs overseas, right? And those jobs didn't come back. So there's a lot of folks, who haven't been able to used to be able to earn a middle class living, not having gone to college, right? But can still earn a middle class living by working at the U.S. steel plant. Well, those jobs have gone, right? You can build AI, you can have AI jobs where a lot of the rank and file job is going to be vocational training. You don't have to go to college, right? You can take courses, you can build proficiency, you could be a prompt engineer, you can earn a middle class living in a green environment, right? Without having and use that to replace a lot of these jobs that we have offshored over the last 30 or 40 years. So if you ask me, I view AI as, not only an agent for change because of its technological advancements, right? But AI is change because it's going to generate a ton of jobs in the United States, right? For people that range from vocational skills where you can earn, $120,000 being a AI, engineer without having to go to college, to people at the top of the pyramid who are like, the PhDs who figure out how to design and architect this system in the first place, right? But there's less of those jobs, right? But there's going to be tons of jobs in addition to all of the infrastructure that's needed to be upgraded and or built from scratch to fuel this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I know a lot of people need to hear that. I could tell.
You're in
So
the real estate business, right?
I'm sorry?
You're in the real estate business to a certain extent, right?
Yes.
I mean, have you seen do your colleagues in real estate talk about AI's implication to infrastructure and to construction and trade labor and things like that?
Absolutely. And so I think that where we, as a CEO that's not in of a non-technology company, we're not on the cutting edge with AI or anything like that. But I think here's where the confusion is from the sort of business executive side of things. There's the sort of industry agnostic tools that you describe, right? That your marketing's done faster. You can write a press release that have sort of an AI assistant that can help. There's that sort of bucket, if you will. Then there's the, call it, the industry disruptive. Like if I was, the managing partner of a 300-person corporate law firm, for example, right? What is that? What does that look like? Do we need to sort of look at our whole business model differently? Is it going to displace this? What have you? And then there's the sort of industry specific applications that like a business like ours, where we do land surveys for large production home builders all across the country, and we do 12 to 15,000 of them a month. And there are certainly probably a dozen applications in our particular field for what AI could do, as going back to sort of as a sword, as opposed to thinking about it like we need a shield.
Right.
And so, but I don't. But people that aren't in it every day hear AI. There's no distinction between this industry agnostic thing or it's going to take my job, and so it's just this kind of like confusing big monster. This is going to change business. We all need to know what's going on. So, I think that maybe why don't you tell us what Enterra does and how it interacts with its clients without getting into specifics?
No.
As sort of an explanation for how businesses are
Sure.
approaching this.
So what we do with companies, we're artificial intelligence, right? And we're applied mathematics. And what we do is we help optimize critical pieces of the value chain for very big. So value chain, think about a large global firm, any brand company that you're familiar with, like Nestle, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, big brand companies, right? If you think about those companies, they have large global ecosystems, right? So they make stuff, they get raw materials coming into the factory, they make stuff, they ship it, they have to understand how to price it and promote it. They have to understand how the humans ascribe value to that. So they give them the things that they want to buy, right? They have to then sell that through retailers. So all of that dance of understanding the demand from the consumer, how to manufacture it, how to source the materials globally, the raw materials necessary to make the product, how to price and promote it and then market it, right? All of that dance, right? To people like us who are complexity scientists, we view it as a big math problem, right? So I view that, right, as a big mathematical model that we can then figure out that that's a large problem, and we are the analysis and control system to analyze and control and optimize the way that that whole synchronous dance needs to happen, right? So what we do is we provide the autonomous decision science, or the area of the platform that we have. We call it an autonomous decision science platform. It brings together symbolic AI that I talked to you about half an hour ago, right? With generative AI. So think of symbolic AI as the brain, generative AI as the communication function. It's the part that talks to you. It's the part that explains things. It's the part that orchestrates actions, right? Coordinates functions. It's symbolic and generative AI combined with glass box explanatory mathematics, right? Because when you analyze something, you want to understand, you want to do it in a way which the mathematics can be explainable to the end user. If I said to you, hey, Brandon, I'm going to do this analysis, I want you to do this, and this for your company. And you say, well, Steve, how does that happen? And I say, well, to black box, the answer just comes out. You're not going to be so satisfied with that answer. You're going to want to know, how did it come at that answer? So I can analyze, I can make sure as a business owner that the analysis that happened was correct. So it makes sense to me as a business expert. I don't have to be the mathematician, but I want to know enough about how it analyzes so I make sure that the analysis is correct given the practical business stuff that I'm exposed to. And then you want to be able to optimize. So you want to be able to say, here's the optimal supply chain manufacturing routine that we're going to do today in order to make the most amount of product at the least expensive way so we can deliver the product to our customers as efficiently as we can. So we bring together a symbolic and generative AI with glass box mathematics, with sophisticated real world optimization. And we bring that platform to create what we call a system of intelligence. You probably have heard of systems of record, transactional systems that run. You've probably heard of the German firm SAP or Oracle or
we use them,
like Salesforce, right? All these big systems that run these big companies, right? Well, those systems were engineered over the last 30, 40 years to record transactions and not make a mistake, right? We've said in the world of artificial intelligence and big data, there's a need for a system of intelligence who is engineered to think, right? So if you have the system of record, the really big, complicated system that records all the transactions, orchestrates all the manufacturing, does all the finance and accounting and HR and billing, all that hugely complicated system, right? Which are, quite frankly, phenomenal achievements of engineering and software, right? Those systems benefit from a counterparty, right? A partner who is the system of intelligence whose job it is to think and then send instructions to those transactional systems. And that's what we do.
Gotcha. So talk about a gross oversimplification, but it's almost like what you're explaining is, a calculator is a phenomenal, very powerful tool, but alone, without somebody to understand what inputs need to go in and how and what order to put them in, et cetera.
And how to use the output from the calculator, right?
Right.
Right.
So you guys are, and again, gross oversimplification, but at least part of what you guys are doing, it sounds like, is you're introducing sort of the brains to these massive, already powerful tools, to be able to make them even more powerful, because now they have that other dimension of also being able to quote unquote think, right?
Exactly. And so you have the transactional system, hugely successful, massively complicated feat of software engineering. it was never engineered, however, to dynamically think about the world around it, right? Our job is to decode the world around it and send instructions, take data back and forth between our system of intelligence that sits on top of the transactional system of record to make it optimally efficient, right?
Gotcha. So like marketing automation might be a good example, right? Where there's a system where you can set it up to send a drip email campaign, but you provide all those inputs. Do one a week, and if they don't open it, then do another one. But if they do open it, then do this. But that's all based off of the tool is there, but it's based off the input for the user. But it sounds like what you guys are able to, for lack of a better term, add brains to it, so that it knows what the optimal email schedule should be, what the content should be, what should happen if somebody clicks on the email, etc.
Exactly.
Is that
well? That in a simplified way, yes.
overly simplified?
No, but simplified examples are good because you want people to get their heads around what's going on, and then if you get people's understanding, I keep using the term zip code, but if you get people's heads in the right zip code, then they can start to imagine more complicated features, and the large global companies, right, are the way that we view them, right, we view a large global public company as a complex system that we are the analysis control engine for, right? We provide the ways of decoding the operations, understanding what the control knobs are, and then how to set the control knobs on a daily basis to maximize the business objectives of the company, right? And that's what we do as a business. We just happen to use artificial intelligence, fancy mathematics, and fancy optimization to make that happen for these companies. But these are all technological innovations that, quite frankly, Brandon, we're reinventing, the capabilities yearly. It's within the year. There's a brilliant Harvard Business School professor, Clayton Christensen, who passed away, whose consulting firm Insight is a strategy firm to our company. But he was the expert in creative destruction, like the innovators dilemma. How do you continue to innovate, destroy what you just innovated to innovate something new, right? So you get this virtual flywheel of innovation and transformation of innovation into the ways of working at a company. So one of the things we're finding, right, is that the technology evolves quickly. The human's ability and the organization's ability to absorb that change, right, is less quick than the technology is evolving, because the technology is evolving so quickly that it's super difficult to retrain the organization, to re-engineer it's called the operating models of companies, the way that they operate. So you've got, companies of way smart people in Accenture and PricewaterhouseCoopers and McKinsey and BCG and Bain, these guys, right? All working with companies to transform their operating model. They call it digital transformation, like to help transform the ways that these companies work to accept the changeable technology in a way that allows them to maximize that in value. And what you're finding is the firms that have the ability to ingest change and to inculcate that change into their workflows and their ways of working are going to be the ones who are going to be the acquirers and survivors in globalizing and consolidating industries.
Now that's interesting. That's really interesting, and that's sort of what I got to be mindful of time. I got to let you go here in a second, but what I am trying to sort of get to is that this acknowledgement of this very significant change agent that's going to change a lot of things, and then just from a very simple sort of lay person perspective, how to see around the corner just a little bit, right? Like what would this potentially look like? And you just, I think, gave a pearl of wisdom there, that it might not necessarily be the entity or individual or organization that adopts one particular piece of technology or is 3 months ahead of this other company in developing or accepting this piece of technology, but the ones that are nimble and are nimble enough to change along with the technology, that might be that might be the key.
It is because you could have the greatest technology in the world, and if it sits on the shelf and nobody uses it, right, then it's not going to work. Or if it gets misused or it doesn't get optimally used, right, it's not going to be as powerful as it could be. So, look, like anything else, it's a complicated dance, right, of humans, machines. How do these integrate? But humans and machines, that were very far apart, are increasingly coming together. So when we call our platform an autonomous decision science platform. We call our product a system of intelligence. We call the management practice, right, a autonomous management science, right? How do you run a business that for the first time, think of it as two strands of DNA, Brandon? You have the AI and the analytic framework of the business equally coinciding with the management practice, such that the management practice is embedded in the AI, and the AI informs the management practice. And these things are two interwoven, strands of the double helix of the DNA of how the company operates, right? Well, and the companies, by the way, that are adopting this technology and that are changing their ways of working are the same companies that looked at every other management science epoch change. So whether it be total quality management with Deming, or competitive strategy with Michael Porter, or Lean and Six Sigma with Womack and the guys up at MIT, right, the Lean Manufacturing Institute, or data-driven analytics, right, or digital transformation. The companies who have been around long enough, the ones that have survived, were also the leaders, right, in every one of these other management science changes over time.
Yep.
So you can see the same characters, right, learning from that, because they feel that if they could adopt this, right, they could get 5, 10, 15 years of competitive advantage. Then they're less than competitive brethren. So they could, like I said, be the ones that acquire and consolidate, right, companies that aren't able to make that transformation. So they have a hyper efficient platform that take the sales and the volume of the companies that can't do it and put it on top of their efficient platform. So I think that's, you're gonna see a lot of that happening, because it's not easy to transform a business. People are harder to transform than a computer, right? So it's a very it's going to be a very interesting challenge from the people management perspective. Like, so the whole HR, people and culture departments of organizations, that are the capacity, the human capacity management of the company, are going to, are going to be partially at the forefront of all this transformation.
Oh, wow. Gosh, so the question that the world's executives should be asking is, how do you run a business that is a hybrid of human and artificial intelligence?
Well, those are going to be, I think you're going to see that a lot being taught at business schools.
I love it.
You're going to see that, and maybe that's a good way to end, but I think that you're going to likely see that being taught and perfected, and then destroyed, retaught, and perfected at a higher level, increasingly getting sophisticated as the technology changes. But the only thing that's going to be constant is that technology is going to change at an increasingly fast pace, and that people are going to need to adapt at an increasingly fast pace, right?
Yeah.
So we shall see what happens, but it's going to be an interesting time.
Absolutely. One final question, just 30 more seconds, and
Sure.
I really appreciate your time.
No problem.
If you were talking to, or if you could go back to the point where you're 21, 22 years old, just getting out of college, opening your eyes to the world, or we're talking to a recent college graduate, The world was their oyster. But they loved technology and wanted to be at the forefront. They wanted to dive into the deep end of artificial intelligence and the next big thing. How would you coach them? What would you tell them to go do?
Well, so I think it's important to come to companies with hard skills, right? But not only hard skills, right? So I would say if you have a predisposition to mathematics, I would focus on applied mathematics, and in particular, areas that deal with high dimensional mathematics. I'd also focus on the ability to have a degree of coding skills where you can, because mathematics is the underlying discipline for scientific inquiry, right? So if you have really good math skills and you have coding skills, because coding, you have to know how to code to a certain extent to be able to express yourself, right? But also complement that, quite frankly, with deep reasoning skills that are not scientific in nature. So I'd understand logic, right? So I'd want to understand mathematical logic and philosophy. So I think understanding how to obtain some hard skills in applied mathematics and software engineering, right, combined with mathematical logic and philosophy, right? Because philosophy teaches your brain how to reason, how to think about it, right? Understanding classics and understanding, philosophical inquiry. Because if you think about, when people say, like, what was the, if you think about, artificial intelligence, right? I think about, Descartes, I think, therefore I am, right? If the computer can think, therefore it is, right? And so I would combine deep reasoning in the humanities with some hard skills that allow me to bridge those two worlds.
Gosh, that's brilliant advice. That is brilliant advice. And I wish we had 3 hours because it's a pleasure.
Any other time.
Well, I just appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom with us. And I've already run you over. And so I apologize. But
Of course.
Steve, thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Thanks, man. Have a nice
day.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget, everybody, you can find Boundary Breakers in a lot of places. You can watch our episodes on the Boundary Breakers YouTube channel, or you can listen to each podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other major podcasting platforms. Thanks for listening.